Hi, everybody. You know who I am, probably. I'm Victoria Moran, and you know this is the Main Street Vegan Podcast. And if you listen all the time, you're thinking, wait a minute, she usually doesn't say that until after she tells some kind of little story. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of that today. It's going to be a bit more personal. You know, not long ago, last week or the week before, we had on Matthew Halteman, who wrote Hungry Beautiful Animals. I hope you've bought the book. And we learned during that interview that the first apartment that I lived in with my first husband in my 20s and Matthew's first apartment when he moved out of his parents' house was on the same street and pretty likely in the same little complex. And so many people have written to me saying, that's so cool. And that's really what I want to do with the Main Street Vegan podcast. Now, obviously, I'm not going to only have on guests who have lived on my block, but I do want to allow for serendipity and little quirky things that have to do with real life. So I'll let you in a little bit on my real life. You may hear barking because we have a new little adoptee, James, not that new. We got him in late November, so we've had him about what, 3 months? And he's wonderful, but he barks. I had two dogs prior and they weren't barkers. So we may hear a little yap yap from James when his dad comes in from physical therapy. And the other thing that's coming up in my life is that they are going to start building a 10-story residential structure about what, 7 feet, 8 feet? I don't know. From our windows. We're at the end of the building adjacent to this new construction. So it's going to be really loud. I'm going to have to figure out how to get a room soundproofed and probably rent co-working space so my husband could have the soundproof room during the day and I would be nearby in the neighborhood, probably with the dog, so I don't have to hire dog walkers, in a co-working space, one that I hope has podcast recording space. And if it doesn't, then I'll be recording this podcast at night when I'm sleepy or on the weekends. And if you've read any of my books, you know that I believe in taking some time off every week. But you know, things change. That's what's going on with me. So if you'd like to be in touch, if you'd like for me to know what's going on with you, I invite you to join the Main Street Vegan Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook and just post and tell people what's going on, me included. Okay, you already know who I am and that this is the Main Street Vegan Podcast. And in the interest of living a beautiful vegan life, making beautiful choices. And if you're somebody who's kind of new to all this and you don't really identify yet as vegan, but you sometimes, oftentimes make a vegan choice, welcome, welcome, welcome. And to the diehard vegans, of course, as well. We want to be here for everybody because, you know, life on Earth has never been easy. We can look out there now and say, gosh, does it seem to be harder than it used to be? Good question. But you know what? There's so many people doing such loving things. And we're going to talk with one of them today. So, if you are watching on YouTube, you've already seen my lovely guest, Cheryl Moss. I particularly am thrilled to have Cheryl on because she is a graduate of Main Street Vegan Academy. And I just love it when people do Main Street Vegan Academy and then go on and further their reach in fantastic ways, as she is doing. So Cheryl is the host of the Better Life for Animals podcast and the creator of the Funding Blueprint for Sanctuaries Virtual Summit, where she highlights the stories of people and sanctuaries working tirelessly to protect animals. Cheryl embraces plant-exclusive living as an expression of her dharma and a daily practice of compassion. Through her books, podcast, and commitment to raising $100,000 for Mercy for Animals, Cheryl uplifts the voices of animals and the humans who care for them. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you, Victoria. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm really honored.
What an amazing person you are. My goodness. When did you do Main Street Vegan Academy? When did we meet?
It would have been 3 years ago in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Ah, well, and you're out there in the West, in the desert.
that's right.
So tell us about what moment of experience first pierced the illusion for you.
I think it was that moment where I saw how animals are being treated in our food system. And it just made me go, you know what? That's not an it. That's a being with feelings and love and can feel pain just like we can. So they became fellow inhabitants of this planet with me. And I just, at that moment, realized that I'd been lied to and that we all, in some way, are being told to, look the other way. But once, as I know you know, Victoria, once you see, you don't unsee it and you wouldn't have it any other way. So I think it starts gradually with one instance where you see something, unpleasant in my case. But the good news is that you can make a choice, as I did, that I'm no longer going to participate in anything knowingly harmful. We live in a place where I can't always know exactly what I'm, taking in, but I certainly try. And it's been a joy. It's been over 20 years for me. And I'm so thankful that I have this awareness, that I have this compassion, and it grows every day. And it's not always easy. We know sometimes it can be quite painful because we know and we see and we feel. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And so I would say, and then, then you hear stories about, someone has a pet chicken. I live in the suburbs. We don't have chickens, but I listen to these stories and I'm like, my goodness, listen to the story about, this little personality in every animal has a personality. And I think as a society, we're asked to not notice that unless it's a cat or a dog, unfortunately. And I love cats and dogs, but there's so many more out there. So it's been a gradual experience and it continues to grow. And I think it'll also, my advocacy also grows because at the beginning, I was fine with just taking care of me. But then I realized there's so much to do and so few of us that there's, everybody who can should try to do something. And I find myself every year adding to what else can I do? Every day I wake up and I say, what can I do for the animals? So that's kind of how I've evolved.
That is so beautiful. And you're reminding me of something that I've been going through lately. I just always assumed that when people really got it about animals, they would maybe not go vegan overnight, but they would certainly be on the path to completely cruelty-free living. But I know some people don't. Some people just work like crazy for the dogs and cats that you talked about.
Mhm.
They're completely dedicated. They give their lives to that. And I'm just working now on just appreciating what everybody does because I don't understand what there is in the DNA or the upbringing or whatever it is of people who have experiences like you had and like maybe many other people listening to this program had, and they can't do anything except change their lives, their buying habits, their consuming habits, but not everybody. Do you have any thoughts on what there is about you that made you ripe for this? Ripe for this? I hope I said that right.
I actually think I'm fortunate. I I caught on to something opened up in me. I like to say I'm awake. I think people are asleep, generally speaking. And it's just, it's easier to stay asleep, I guess, because
Mm.
I don't want to be judgmental because I've done so many things around like food, as an example. I hire a chef who cooks beautiful plant-based meals, or we had a party over the holidays and we did this chocolate tasting thing, and they were all vegan. All the food, all the chocolates were vegan. My friends were not all vegan. They didn't necessarily know. I didn't bring it up. They loved the chocolate. They wanted to know where I got that chocolate. And so many of them went out and ordered that for gifts. So
Aha.
it's like you think, okay, victory. And, but they don't necessarily go make that connection to how is this chocolate different than the C's or the FLM that I otherwise may have chosen. But I do believe that with that victory of people, in my circle ordering these chocolates, it's opening a little space for them to say, gee, I didn't have to, and I'm going to feel good about this now, right? I'm going to feel good about what I consumed. And I love the idea of, over time, for some people, when they get to see all the many alternatives out there, and they realize one day they don't need all those other harmful options. And it appears as though it's easier then to maybe make the switch. But it's such an individual thing, as you know.
Mm. Yeah, I wish somebody would do a big study. I mean, I know it seems like people can get money to fund studies on the most esoteric, bizarre, and sometimes very harmful to animals things, and yet nobody has been able yet to study why some people see the images, hear the story, read the book, and it's so easy for them to change their lives, and others not yet. But tell us the name of the chocolate because I'll bet a lot of people would like to check that out.
Well, this was Dahlman's, and they have a whole vegan section.
How do you spell it?
I think it's Dahlmns, Dahlman's.
Okay, well, we'll look that up and put it in the show notes at mainstreetvegan.com, where you can
Yes.
also find out all about Cheryl Moss and the Better Life for Animals podcast and everything else she does. So, in your podcast, you focus on speaking with sanctuary founders, sanctuary advocates, and what truths have surfaced that challenge the kind of feel good stories that humans tell themselves about humane treatment and ethical consumption?
Well, you have to realize that these sanctuaries are taking in animals who have been tortured in some cases, who have been neglected, who are suffering from, and they're there to recover and offer them, life for the rest of their life on hopefully their own terms. So they're dealing with a lot of trauma. And I think that what you see, what sanctuary owners and workers find is that, this is where you really get to understand that animals, just like people, love and feel and miss their children and want to move and want to be free and, nest or roam in ways that our society and the food system has commoditized animals into things and made it just as convenient as possible for us, as fast as possible to do the job. They don't get a life. And, that is tragic. But what I love about sanctuaries is that they're not only providing a safe haven for those lucky few, and it's very few, but I happen to believe that it's through places like sanctuaries that the humans out there who really have all the power and can make all the choices can go out and meet these animals that they otherwise may not have an opportunity to meet because we're just annihilating all the different species except for the ones that serve us, I guess, for food. Sanctuaries are a wonderful place for people in modern society to see farmed animals living out their lives as they were meant to live them in a peaceful, safe, secure environment. It's an opportunity for people to make a different choice around what they're taking in, because if they met these animals, I like to believe they would never want to harm them, and they certainly wouldn't want to eat them. But my focus for this year, Victoria, is going to be around the youth. It's going to be around people like Daniel Hanisch, who has a program called LEAP, which goes into sanctuaries all over the country, and they're expanding, offering basically high school students an opportunity to intern, shall we say, with the animals as volunteers, and also to learn leadership skills, and also to get to know the animals, you know. So there's a real outreach there. There's a give and a take. And I feel like that gets a lot of attention because parents care about their kids. They want to educate them. So there's some real traction there. So I think every sanctuary, if they want to be sustainable, because that's also an issue, they need to consider how are we going to get our word out. And so many of these sanctuaries are in very, rural areas for good reason, because they can get the land. But the downside of that is not enough people get to see that. So I'm always trying to think of ways of how, it's not just that we're going to sanctuary our way out of this problem, because of course we're not, but it is an opportunity for the average person, the average citizen in our country to see, how it could be different, how it was meant to be, I believe.
Right. Well, they do a magnificent service. I
They do.
remember when Gene Bauer, who founded Farm Sanctuary, just had the idea, he and his then wife, Lori Bouston, and they were traveling through the country raising money. And I was living in Milwaukee at the time, and I remember the meeting of the animal rights group. I think it was called PAWS, People for Animal Rights. I'm not positive because I lived in different cities and they had different animal rights groups. But anyway, I think it was PAWS. And we were all just thinking, well, he's so good looking, he's so articulate, but you can't do that. You can't just have big farmed animals on a piece of land. I mean, we just didn't get it. And now, of course, there are hundreds, but I'm not sure that's the best thing either. I know you wrote a beautiful blog post a while back for mainstreetvegan.com about maybe why supporting the sanctuaries that are already there are better than starting your own. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I absolutely agree with you that they have to be sustainable. This is a business. And that is why we just had our Blueprint Summit for sanctuaries just a couple of weeks ago, because if you have a sanctuary, we want you to succeed. You need to have in place a plan. These animals are going to be around for, in some cases, 30 years, sometimes more. Do you have a plan? And if you think you don't have the time or the money to make a plan, or to have a budget, or to hire a lawyer, have a marketing plan, all of those things that go with running a business. If you don't have time for that, then you're not necessarily in a good position to grow. Now, a lot of sanctuaries, they start out of, I don't know, you have an acre and somebody's dumping an animal in your lap. Those are all over the place. And I mean, you want to support those people. Yeah, I can't tell you how many people we've talked to. Some of them, they go off to their regular job all day, and then they come home and they're, taking care of these animals. And I'm thinking, you don't get a vacation, you don't get a Sunday, because you're basically running a farm. So it feels like too much.
Mm-hmm.
But we offered some best practices in our summit to basically offer support. It's like, and also, let's huddle up. Let's talk to our neighboring sanctuaries who can help, give you what I have this, you have that. It's it's such an underserved space, and it's so important. And these people are just doing, amazing work. So I want to support them and I want to shine a light on that.
Talk to me about the donor base because I know that the percentage of vegans in the population has not grown. I think it did for a while. Now we seem to be back down again. So, how has that donor base from 1985, when Gene Bauer was traveling across the country, to now when there are hundreds of sanctuaries, have the donors increased by all those hundredfold?
I don't know that I know the actual numbers to that. I do know that of all the philanthropic dollars that we as a society give to animals, about I think it's 96 or 97% of it goes to cats and dogs. So
Wow.
you're right. It's a tiny sliver. But that's why, all the more reason why they have initiatives and plans in place of ways to get their volunteers to be donors, to be regular monthly, you know, contributors in so many ways. So I'm not here to tell you that, yes, oh, it's growing, it's blossoming. I cannot say that. All the more reason why I feel we have to, speak up at a time when, if anything, things are looking a little lean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an important time right now. And I know it just feels like, oh my gosh, there's so many places to put what money is left. And I know for a lot of people, there's not much left because everything seems so incredibly expensive. And yet to just really have that kind of intuitive push to, this is the place for you. Maybe you can't give everything to everybody, but there's some place, there's some cause, there's something that will just kind of grab your heart. And gosh, they deserve all of our help, whatever we can possibly do for them. So tell us a little bit, Cheryl, as if you were speaking to somebody new to plant-based living, like what mindset shift, and it can be little, but what helps them move from like comfort to clarity, where compassion is not like a lifestyle trend, but truly a moral stance against harm.
Yeah, I think it's important to shift it from what am I having to give up to how am I supporting our planet? How am I supporting these animals? I'm allowing myself to live among them in the way that they intended. It's a joy, it's an honor because I can make a different choice. I can always make the choice. So it's nice to be able to say, I didn't go that route. I didn't have turkey for Thanksgiving. I had any number of the most wonderful plant-based options, which thankfully, as you know today, there are. We are living in a very easy time actually to
We
be
are.
plant-based. It wasn't always like that, right?
No. Yeah, it is easy. I think it's maybe anything is easy if you really want to do it.
Right.
And then that's the thing. So, do you have support in your life or your family members and friends down with this, or are you kind of the lone vegan in your world?
I would go, I'm more the latter. And that's why I joined your wonderful academy. That's why I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in August,
Yay!
because you need to find your people wherever they are. And the good news is they're out there. But no, my immediate circle of friends, I've got a couple of them that are plant-based, and they're all willing to go with me. They'll go to Crossroads. When they come to my house, it's plant-based. They're very amenable to that. But are they doing what I've done? Not that I've noticed. But
Yeah.
I feel like you never know, you never know. Just like with the chocolate, I may have made an impact.
Well, you did make an impact. I mean, to me, every time somebody chooses vegan, whatever it is, instead of non-vegan, whatever it was, it moves forward. And if
Right.
the product is wonderful, then that's going to become their go-to chocolate or whatever it is. So I think it's so important as I'm looking. I know we're now in the second month of 2026. I can't believe it. I mean, the year still feels so new to me. It was like, wasn't Christmas last week? But in 2026, I'm just trying to figure out more ways to just give this way of living as a delightful option to as many people as possible, or if some people just want it partially, they can take it partially because, like you say, each one of these animals is valuable, and anybody that doesn't have to go through that food system, anybody that doesn't have to wind up in a slaughterhouse, what a wonderful thing that
Mhm.
is to think about. So, talk to us about your specific purpose and your specific passion.
I wake up every day and spend, it's always on my mind, what more can I do? What more can I do? How can I be of service to animals? You know, I've gone down the path of being upset and angry. I've seen therapists about it, and they're like, well, none of that anger is going to change any heart or any mind, you know? So I am looking every day for ways to make a little bit of impact. That's why I written 3 children's books. That's why I have a podcast. It's not that I think that I'm all that. I'm just an ordinary person, but there are not enough of us. And so for the rest of my life, be that, 3 days or 30 years, I'm very much committed to this because I want to be able to end my life saying I did everything that I could to, end this horrific system. It's just barbaric.
It
One day
is.
we will all, we know one day we won't be doing this. I don't know when, sooner better than later, but one day we will look back on this and go, what? You did what? It's just crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And I forget sometimes how entrenched it is in society. My husband and I have been watching The West Wing because somehow we missed it 25 years ago. But it's so interesting that even at that time, and I'm sure it's just the same, whenever something comes up about animal agriculture, it's never about animals. It's always what it'll do to the stock market or how many head of cattle will do this or that, not beings. And I know that there's so many different ways to try to create a vegan world, and so many people are doing so many powerful and positive different kinds of things with products and restaurants and advocacy. And I just feel that something that is important is to just normalize that these are beings. Whatever you do is what you do, but oops, they're beings,
Mhm.
you know, because I think that's just so lost. And only for food animals, like you say, any animal that we give a name becomes somebody. But as you and I know, they were somebody before they got the name. So when you are out in the world, how do you express your veganism, your animal advocacy? Do you keep it to yourself? Do you make a big deal of it? Do you wear message shirts? How do you carry the message?
I am proud to be vegan. And any restaurant I ever go to, I always am asked saying, I'm vegan. What vegan options do you have? If there are no vegan options on the menu, I am writing a card saying, where are your vegan options? I am not quiet about it. At the same time, I work from home. I'm in my 60s. I'm not out there. I, I'm out there in the sense that I'm on my podcast and I'm talking to you and things like this, but I'm anybody who asks, the answer is I'm vegan. I think it's a wonderful word. I'm not afraid of it. I don't see any reason why people should be offended by it. Quite the opposite.
I love it how you said that, it's such a lovely word. I had somebody on this podcast early, early, early on. I'm going to blank on his name. He'd written a book about eating vegan for the environment. He was a professor in Texas somewhere. And I remember his saying, I see vegan as a very hopeful word. And that's how I see it too. I know it can set people apart. And I think I like to use it more as an adjective than as a noun because if we say, I am, like I could say, I'm a New Yorker, which implies I'm not relating to people other places. Or, I am this political party or that political party, then the implication is, so I don't like the other half of the people. And so I've said, I mean, obviously for over 40 years that I'm vegan, and yet I'm going to work this year with a little more using it more as an adjective. And when people say, are you vegan? I'll say, I do try to live a cruelty-free life and just see if I get any more mileage or less.
Well, we're still looking for the answer. So
Yes,
we're
we
going to
are.
keep trying to weave it as we see it, trying to find that magic. It just takes one campaign or one something where we could turn away from it. We could
Yeah.
go, we're not doing that anymore. I mean, I think about smoking or,
Yeah.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I mean, that used to be acceptable. It wasn't great, but people did it. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
acceptable anymore. It can turn on a dime
Yes,
because
it
we
can.
can change our mind. So for
That
that, I remain hopeful. And yeah, I think we have to look for creative ways to get that message across.
So, looking at the long thread of your work, we didn't really talk about your children's books. So, let's just do that real quick before you have to go. Tell us about the kids' books, why you wrote them, what they are, where we can find them.
Sure. During COVID, there was an interview on NPR with a famous chef talking about because milk was just being poured out. They didn't have the distribution for it. And this famous chef is saying, the government needs to work with the restaurant industry because we have the ability to get it to the people. And I was so upset because it was during the pandemic that I thought, maybe we're going to get it now. Maybe this is our chance for people to recognize what's happening, why we're suffering this way, what we're doing to the animals. I really thought that could have been our moment. Of course, it wasn't, but I was very angry about the milk. So I wrote a book called Gabriel, which is about basically a cow slated for veal that is rescued from a, a horrible situation. It's a children's book, so it doesn't go into any of that. But a girl rescues this cow. So I wrote that one. I wrote it through Lantern PM, and then so now I've written a book about the cows. Well, what about all the chickens and the turkeys and the fowl? So I wrote Cluck, which is a story about basically these elderly birds are sitting on their perch up at the sanctuary watching the equivalent to a Chick-fil-A in a warehouse being built downstairs, sort of like the construction that you're going through, right? Like, ugh. And how they basically, try to, you know, turn hearts and minds back to the sanctuary and thinking about the chickens. And so then the final book is called Pickle, where I learned through a true story that a lot of these pigs, like down in the south, if there's a hurricane or what have you, they are left to fend for themselves. And if they survive, they are no longer eligible for slaughter. So I took that information along with how very, very smart pigs are. And this one pig survives and is rescued and ends up at a sanctuary. So it's 3 children's books, very beautifully illustrated because I hired somebody who did a great job. And they're basically for children. They all have a call to action, and I feel very proud of them. They're available on all the books channels. They're available through Lantern PM. They're available through my website.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that's just so what we need to do because kids don't need much pushing because they came with this kind of kindness.
Right.
It's taught out of them or
Right.
educated out of
100.
them.
That's right. That's
Ah,
why I'm
so
hoping to work. That's why I really want to focus on the youth.
yeah, yeah. And they are more open. I mean, we know that the greatest growth in veganism is the Gen Z folks. So let's just keep them coming.
Yep.
So what what belief anchors you when telling the truth is really difficult?
I don't think it's difficult because I'm speaking up for those animals. Everything I do, it's like, well, did that help the animals?
Oh, wow. That's beautiful, beautiful. So tell us where we can find you, where we can find your podcast, and what's next for you.
Well, I have a website that has all the information. It's betterlifeforanimals.com, all spelled out. You can reach me at hello at Better Life for Animals. And as I'd mentioned, we're into season 2 for our podcasts, and we interview anybody that has a vegan message who is also a vegan. And yes, we do emphasize sanctuary work. And as I mentioned, we're going to be looking to do a second summit, this time around teenagers who are working in sanctuary life, because I really think there is something to be said for those. I'm going to go with 14-year-olds who are being, they want to get along, they want to be part of the crowd, and I hate to see them not have a place to feel like they have a community so that they can stay with their vegan values.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Sometimes people who don't know vegans decide that we wouldn't be nice or that we'd be judgmental or something. And whenever I talk to somebody like you, it's like, we're really nice. And so it's good if we can kind of get that message out there. So everybody, I do want to let you know about Main Street Vegan Academy. It's come up a few times in the conversation with Cheryl Moss, who, as she said, is a certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator through Main Street Vegan Academy. If you would like to be that as well, please check us out at mainstreetvegan.com, where we'll also have the show notes and all the ways that you can find Cheryl and her books and her websites and her wonderful work. And you can find out about the next Zoom course, which is happening this fall. Now, when Cheryl said that she looks forward to seeing me in New York, that's because every other year we do something. It's a reunion in person in New York City. And we're going to have one of those this year, but instead of having it only for graduates, anybody who signs up and wants to enroll in that as well. You can certainly enroll only in the Zoom course. The New York experience has nothing to do with getting you certified. But if you think it sounds like a fun weekend, that August 7th through 9th, that's also going to be up on the website pretty soon. And if you have any questions, there is a contact form. You can just reach out and we will get right back to you. So, Cheryl, bless you. Thank you. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for zeroing in on this one area that if it grows, we all grow. If it thrives, many, many animals are saved just as part of that, and so many more because of the ambassador work that these animals do on behalf of others who aren't so lucky. So thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, bless your heart. And everybody else, hey, let us go out and make Main Street vegan.